This week, Congress handed gun safety reform activists in the United States a major victory. Right now, a new spending bill is sitting on President Trump's desk that, for the first time in decades, would include substantial funding for research on gun violence. $25 million, in fact. Let me just show that to you. $25 million. The House and the Senate approved this bill this week after lawmakers struck a bipartisan deal on Monday ahead of the shutdown deadline, which they needed to fund. But while much attention is focused on Washington to make change, the biggest efforts to combat gun violence in this country are actually happening at the state level. A new review conducted by Everytown for Gun Safety and Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America reveals that 18 different states, as well as Washington, D.C., passed common sense gun safety legislation in 2019. And in 2018, more than 1,000 gun sense candidates were elected to office. That same year, activists helped push 20 states to pass significant gun violence prevention bills, including laws that disarm domestic abusers, enforce background checks, and the so-called red flag laws. Now, in the last year, 4 states, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, and New York, along with D.C., enacted these red flag laws, bringing the total number of states with those policies up to 17. Now, despite these achievements, this year in the United States, there have been more than 38,000 deaths due to gun violence and 399 mass shootings. Joining me now is the founder of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, Shannon Watts. And Shannon, you do want to point out, which is why we set this out, you want to point out that there has been remarkable success. There is a lot of failure at the federal level, particularly with the United States Senate not taking up background safety legislation, which the House has actually passed. But there's actually been a lot of progress across America, both on the elected front and on the state front.
It's so important to remember that we're winning. You know, cynicism is dangerous. It prevents people from getting off the sidelines. I wouldn't wake up and do this as a volunteer every single day if we weren't winning. And in addition to all that you mentioned, we're making huge strides electorally, legislatively, culturally. The tide has turned. If you look at Virginia just in November, our organization outspent the NRA 8-1. We flipped both chambers of the General Assembly, and now we'll go in January and pass stronger gun laws. And this is how it gets done. You know, what I've learned in the last 7 years of doing this work is really Congress is where this ends. It's not where it begins. And so we need to keep doing this work in state houses and in boardrooms and in courthouses. And I am confident that we are so close to getting what we need to save American lives.
Let's talk about this funding for gun safety, for gun violence research. Why is this important? What does this change?
We have been asking the government to fund the CDC to look into gun violence in this country. What is our crisis? What's the extent of it? How do we solve it? For 7 years now, through petitions and calls and emails and meetings and rallies. And finally, they listened. The Democrats got together with the Republicans and they agreed to allocate $25 million. Now, that's not all we asked for, but it is a good start. And now we can actually start applying this kind of research to this crisis that kills over 100 Americans every single day. Imagine if anything else was killing Americans at that rate, it would be considered a priority. And now, finally, we are getting the research funding we need.
And there are people at the CDC who have said that this kind of research leads to important things. They often use seatbelts as the example, right? When you study the effects of what not wearing seatbelts do, you end up with laws that end up saving lives. That's the goal here. It's not to come out as pro-gun or anti-gun. It's about saying to what degree do guns pose a health and safety challenge to Americans?
That's right. That's exactly right. How can we fix this crisis? What laws work? What laws don't? And that's exactly why the NRA has opposed it for so long, because they don't want any law at all. I mean, I've been doing this work again for 7 years. I've never seen the NRA come to the middle and say, oh, that law looks like it would save lives. Let's pass it. They see any law whatsoever as an infringement on the Second Amendment, but ultimately on something that might tamp down their profits. And God forbid that happen, right? So this is about saving American lives, doing what Americans want us to do, letting the lawmakers write laws, not the gun lobby.
Shannon, let me just ask you something. You said 7 years. 7 years. Tomorrow is 7 years and 1 week from the Sandy Hook massacre. Are we better off or worse off with respect to guns than we were then?
We are so much better off. The bills the NRA had in mind, this agenda they have of guns for anyone, anywhere, anytime, no questions asked, that was sailing through our nation's state houses. We have passed over 300 good gun safety laws since Sandy Hook. And on top of that, we have a 90% track record of stopping bad NRA bills like Stand Your Ground and forcing guns onto college campuses and arming teachers every year for 5 years in a row. And don't forget, the NRA gave Donald Trump $30 million. They expected to turn around and pass the legislation they tried to pass for so long, and they failed. They've had no return on investment in that $30 million they invested in Donald Trump because we've gotten so good at playing defense. And I really believe that 2020 will be the most pivotal year for our issue in the history of the movement. And so that's why we need everyone off the sidelines so that we can elect a gun-sense president and Senate, keep the House, and keep flipping the makeup of state legislatures. We are so close.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.